Rates. You settle deeper into the worn canvas chair, its fabric sagging just enough to cradle your weight after the long day's heat. Rates. The river is close. Close enough that the smell of it drifts into the courtyard, like damp stone and silt. Rates. Mingled with the faint sweetness of palm trees, and cooking fires from the alleys beyond. The Nile, eternal and indifferent. Rates. Slides past in the dimming light, its surface turning from the harsh gleam of day into something softer, like brushed metal beneath the rising dusks. A brass lamp glows faintly on the low table beside you, its flame dimmed to save paraffin. Its glass chimney is smudged with smoke. Rates. And the faint scent of burnt oil clings to your clothes the way it always does by evening. You take a long, steady breaths, drawing in not only the oil and the river, but the city itself. Cairo in 1889, alive with contradictions. Somewhere beyond the courtyard wall. Rates. A donkey brays. Farther off, the sharp whistle of a British steam launch on the river carries across the water. Rates. Mingling with the softer calls of boatmen urging their feluccas into dock before nightfall. You close your eyes just for a moment. Rates. Letting the warmth of the day ebb from your skin. The linen of your shirt sticks lightly to your back. Even at this hour, the desert heat clings. Rates. Though you have learned to accept it, as one accepts the prick of dust in the throat. Tonight, like most nights since your arrival, you wait. Rates. Waiting has become its own occupation. Waiting for word, for funding, for the desert to loosen her secrets. Rates. You leafed earlier through your battered notebook, the leather cracked from years of use. Rates. Its pages filled with half-legible sketches and fragments copied under poor light in the British Museum's basement. Strange glyphs, half-familiar. Rates. Half-resistant to the Rosetta Stone's revelations, still haunt you. They whisper of things older than Khufu, older than the dynasties even Petrie has begun to catalogue with scientific care. The year is 1889, and Egypt lies under British occupation, its capital swarming with scholars, merchants, and opportunists. By day, the streets are filled with the rattle of carriages. Rates. The glow of gas lamps being trimmed for evening, and the chatter of cafes where French, Arabic, and English rise together in restless music. Rates. By night it quiets, though not entirely. Somewhere not far from here in the narrow lanes of Bullock. Rates. You can smell roasting coffee and tobacco smoke carried on the night air. You pull the thin blanket over your knees, more from habit than necessity. Rates. It comforts you to feel its coarse weave against your fingers. The faint scent of camel hair, still clinging from the caravan that brought it. Small things, fabric, lamplight, the trickle of water in clay jars cooling in the corner, ground you here in Cairo. And yet, Rates. Behind each comfort lurks the weight of expectation. You have not crossed continents merely to enjoy the Nile at dusk. Rates. The courtyard stones are warm still, holding the memory of sun. You trace your eyes along the shadows gathering there. Rates. Deepening at the edges like ink seeping into paper. A cat prowls near the wall. Rates. Pausing to fix its golden eyes on you before vanishing soundlessly into the night. Rates. The silence it leaves behind is not quite silence. The hum of crickets rises, steady and unbroken. Rates. And now and then you hear the splash of water as a boatman pulls in his oars. Somewhere in the British quarter, laughter rings out. Voices of young officers and clerks stationed here, their evening spent with gin, imported cigars, and talk of empire. Rates. Their Cairo is not your Cairo. You came not for indulgence, but for pursuit, the truth hinted at by the fragile inscriptions you discovered years ago. Rates. The whispers that the pyramids are not what they seem, that the desert's most enduring monuments may belong not to the pharaohs. Rates. But to an age lost even before them. You let the thought linger as the lamp flickers. Petrie himself, meticulous in his surveys. Rates. Has noted the erosion along the stones of Giza. You recall his words, scratches of precision in a world otherwise drunk on speculation. Rates. The erosion looks more like the patient work of water than of sand and wind. How could that be in this land of dryness? Rates. Unless the monuments had stood through times when the Nile swelled higher, when rains lashed down upon the plateau in ages now forgotten. Rates. The idea unsettles your colleagues, whose reputations rest on neat dynastic tables, on the Palermo stone's fractured chronology. Rates. on the Rosetta Stone's proud translations that at last allowed Egypt to be slotted into the grand European story of civilization. But the inventory stale, uncovered near the Sphinx and quietly dismissed by many hints otherwise. Even in Khufu's day, it claimed, rates, the Sphinx and pyramids were already ancient, already standing. Your hand lingers over the notebook on your lap, though you do not open it, rates. The sketches inside, glyphs copied furtively from overlooked fragments in the museum, pulse in your mind like embers, even in the quiet night, rates. They suggest a lineage unrecorded, a pre-dynastic people whose memory the desert has mostly erased. You breathe out slowly, rates. Feeling the weight of Cairo pressing in around you, the city caught between antiquity and modernity, rates. Between the Nile's eternal cycles and the telegraph wires strung now across its rooftops. It is a place of waiting, of watching, where secrets might surface, if only you are patient enough. The hours slip gently by. Across the courtyard, your paraffin lamp gutters, rates, its glow shrinking into itself. You set it carefully aside, letting moonlight take its place. The light is softer now, silver against the pale walls, rates, making every shadow stretch longer, quieter. You can smell the cooling air, the desert's way of reminding you that while the sun burns fiercely, rates, night can cut sharply too. Your thoughts turn to tomorrow, though tomorrow promises little different from today. Letters unanswered, rates. Small exchanges with local guides whose eyes flicker when you press too deeply about the plateau, and evenings like this, spent in waiting, rates. It is not wasted time, you tell yourself. The desert reveals nothing to the hurried. Somewhere nearby, rates, a muezzin's voice calls the last prayer of the day. The sound is soft, almost swallowed by the night, rates, but it carries with a solemnity that makes your chest ache in a way you cannot name. Perhaps it is because you too, rates, are calling across a vast distance, across centuries rather than streets, seeking an answer from the silence that lies beyond, rates. You shift beneath the blanket, tucking it closer. The night air brushes your skin, cool now, rates, as though it carries a trace of stone long buried beneath sand, rates. You wonder how many nights the pyramids themselves have known, how many blankets wrapped around bodies waiting, as you wait now, for dawn, rates, for meaning, for revelation. Dust lingers in the folds of your trousers from the day's walk along the embankment, rates. You had gone there with a local boy, Ahmed, who carried water for you wrapped in wet cloth to keep it cool, rates. The riverbank was crowded, steamships loading crates bound for Europe, their hulls heavy with antiquities pried from tomes, rates, destined for glass cases in London or Paris. You watched as one crate, marked with French lettering, was heaved aboard under the eye of an officer. You had wondered what it contained: a stela, a painted sarcophagus board, or perhaps fragments of the very story you seek, rates. Already leaving the land that bore them, the rivalry between nations is palpable here. Every cafe hums with arguments in English, French and German, rates, each scholar insisting on his own chronology, his own interpretation of Herodotus' second hand accounts or Manetho's later king lists. To them, the pyramids are prizes in a contest of prestige. To you, they are questions waiting patiently in stone. And yet, beneath your calm exterior, rates, you feel a quiet unease tonight. Something unsettles the rhythm of your waiting, rates. Perhaps it is the dust creeping in more heavily than usual through the shutters, rates. The way it coats the table in a film that no hand seems to have placed there. Perhaps it is the overdue letter from London, the funding uncertain, rates. The silence growing too long. Or perhaps it is nothing more than the faint sound you thought you heard earlier. A low vibration, almost like a sigh, rates, carried from the river or the desert beyond. You cannot be certain. Still, you let the night fold around you. You breathe in the scents once more. Oil smoke, river water, palm sap, distant tobacco. You let your body sink into the chair, blanket tight, notebook close by. Tomorrow may bring news, rates. Tomorrow may bring nothing. Either way, the pyramids will remain on their plateau, rising out of the sand as they always have, rates. Their age written not in dates but in silence. The lamp has gone out now, rates. The courtyard is lit only by moonlight and the faintest reflection of gas lamps across the water. You feel your breath slow, your thoughts soften, rates. The waiting has stretched into a ritual, each night a quiet descent into patience, into stillness, into the knowledge that answers rarely come when you demand them, but sometimes when you simply sit, listening, wrapped in the ordinary textures of the night. You lean your head back against the chair, eyes drifting shut. The cat has returned, curling itself into the shadow of the wall. The Nile flows steadily on, its smell rich and earthy. The pyramids wait in silence far upstream. Older than empires, older than kings. You breathe and wait and breathe again. And in the gentle rhythm of your breath, the night seems to speak, not loudly, not in words, but in the quiet assurance that all things come in their time. The morning begins as it always does, with the sound of Cairo stirring awake, the Nile catching the first pale light, and the scent of bread rising from the bakery down the street. You hear the creak of donkey carts carrying vegetables toward the market, the muted chatter of women drawing water, and the metallic chime of a blacksmith already at work in the alley. The air is cooler now, touched with the faint dampness that lingers after the river's night breath. You stand at the edge of the courtyard, stretching the stiffness from your limbs. Your notebook rests on the table, its edges curling slightly from last night's humidity. The dust that troubled you in the evening has settled further. It clings to the corners of your papers and to the brass hinge of your compass. You brush it away, though the fine grains leave a faint roughness on your fingertips. Breakfast comes simply, a cup of bitter coffee and a piece of flatbread, still warm. You chew slowly, gazing out at the river. Steamships belch black smoke on the horizon, their stacks rising like new obelisks above the water. The city is both ancient and modern, its pulse measured now not only by the flood of the Nile, but by the timetables of ships and trains. It is then that a newspaper arrives, carried by a boy whose bare feet slap softly against the stones. He bows his head, mutters a quick greeting in Arabic, and presses the folded paper into your hand. His breath smells faintly of dates. You press a coin into his palm, 1 piastra, and he darts away, leaving the smell of dust and sweat behind him. The paper is Al-Aram, its masthead smudged but legible. You unfold it carefully, the ink still faintly staining your fingers. Most of the front page is filled with political news. The debates over irrigation canals, British administrators setting new tariffs on grain. But your eyes catch on a smaller column set low on the page, almost as an afterthought. It speaks of Petrie's most recent surveys at Giza, published in a London journal and now echoed here. The measurements, exact to fractions of an inch, describe the weathering on the Great Pyramid's limestone casing, and the curious depressions surrounding the Sphinx. The words are clinical, precise, but to you they blaze like fire erosion consistent with sustained water flow, not mere sand or wind. You read the phrase twice, then again. A warmth rises in your chest, not the heat of Cairo's sun, but something inward, insistent, It is the affirmation of what you have suspected all along. The pyramids may not be children of the pharaoh's dry kingdoms at all, but survivors of an earlier world, one drenched in rain and flood. You fold the paper slowly, holding it for a long moment in your lap. Around you, the city continues its day as though nothing has shifted, but for you something has. The waiting has cracked, Your fingers trace the edge of your notebook, then open it to the sketches you made in London. The glyphs there, odd, stubborn signs that resisted neat translation, take on new life under the weight of this article. Could they belong to the same forgotten age? When rains cut deep channels into stone, could they be records of rulers who came before the lists carved onto the Palermo stone? You think, too, of the inventory stele, unearthed only decades ago near the Sphinx. Scholars dismissed it, embarrassed by its suggestion that Khufu merely repaired monuments already ancient in his time. But placed beside Petrie's observations, the dismissal feels premature. It feels like fear of a history that does not fit the measured lines of dynasties. Your colleagues in London scoffed at your fascination with these scraps. One in particular, Dr. Havisham, tall, hawk-nosed, his voice carrying always across the library, mocked you openly. You're chasing shadows, Whitcomb. Egypt is orderly, sequential. Dynasties, reigns, inscriptions. Leave myths to poets. You hear his voice now, even here, but it has lost some of its force, Brates. The newspaper in your hands weighs more than his scorn. You rise from the chair, restless, and pace the courtyard, Brates. The blanket slips from your shoulders, left behind on the chair. You feel the grit of sand beneath your soles, pressed into the stone, Brates. Your shadow falls long across the wall, sharp in the morning sun. The air smells of smoke from cooking fires, of river water beginning to warm, of dust lifting into the sky with each passing cart. You pause near the gate, listening, Brates. The voices of scholars drift faintly from a cafe down the street. Frenchmen, by their accents, speaking of their finds at Sakura, new tombs, Brates, new inscriptions. Their laughter carries, tinged with wine even this early. To them, discovery is a matter of trophies. For you, it is something deeper. Your eyes return to the newspaper. You unfold it again, reading Petrie's words until they blur. Each line is a spark, Brates, igniting a path you cannot yet see but know you must follow. You breathe slowly, deliberately. The calm returns, but within it lies urgency, Brates. The pyramids wait not as curiosities, but as riddles on the verge of being solved. And you, with your notebook, your stubborn conviction, Brates, and now this article, are no longer merely waiting. Something has begun. The rest of the morning drifts in a haze of half-attention, Brates. You copy Petrie's words carefully into your notebook, ink blotting where your hand trembles with haste. You underline water erosion twice, then 3 times. The sound of the city fades as you write, until even the steamship whistles seem distant. Later you walk along the embankment, drawn by habit but carried now by purpose. The sun climbs, its heat fierce on your shoulders. You sip sparingly from your flask, Brates. The water cool only because it is wrapped in damp cloth. The streets are crowded with vendors shouting, children darting, camels shifting under loads of grain. The air is a swirl of spices, sweat and smoke. At the edge of the river, you pause. A felucca glides past, Brates, its sail catching the light like a pale wing. Beyond it, you see the shimmer of the desert, hazy in the distance, where the plateau of Giza rises, Brates. Even from here, you imagine the pyramids standing, vast and patient, their stones marked not only by wind and sand but by the memory of rain, Brates. You breathe deeply, letting the thought settle into your bones. The waiting is over. Something in you has shifted, Brates, as surely as the river shifts with each season's flood. That night, as you sit again in your chair beneath the lamp's glow, Brates, you open the notebook once more. The glyphs stare back, unyielding but alive. The newspaper rests beside them, folded and worn already at its creases, Brates. You touch both lightly, as one might touch relics in a shrine. The air is cooler, the night still. A breeze drifts through the shutters, Brates, carrying with it the faint scent of jasmine and distant wood smoke. You draw the blanket over your knees and close your eyes, Brates, letting the rhythm of your breath match the slow turning of the river. You are no longer merely waiting. You are listening, preparing, leaning forward into what is to come, and in the stillness, you feel it the first true spark. The following morning begins with dust. Fine, Brates, unrelenting, it creeps beneath the shutters, coats the table, Brates, settles into the lines of your notebook, as though determined to erase your words grain by grain. You brush it away with the side of your hand, but more always returns. Cairo is never still. The air carries too much smoke, sand, pollen, ash, for pages to stay clean. You sip at the coffee, bitter and almost gritty, watching the courtyard brighten under the rising sun. The newspaper lies folded where you left it, its creases sharp, Brates, as if you might wear them through from rereading. Petrie's words burn quietly in your mind, yet alongside them another voice intrudes, Brates. The mocking drawl of Havisham, echoing from across the years. Shadows, Whitcomb. Always shadows. Dynasties are orderly. Why chase the impossible? You hear it with each swallow of coffee, with each glance toward your notebook. By mid-morning, you set out, Brates. The streets are alive with the usual press of movement, donkey carts clattering over stone, vendors crying dates and figs, Brates, veiled women moving quickly between doorways. British officers stride past in khaki linen, their boots polished, their voices carrying loudly over the din. The air smells of dust and frying onions, of smoke from charcoal braziers, Brates. Your destination is a shaded cafe near the Ezbekia Gardens, a haunt of scholars and adventurers alike. Inside, ceiling fans turn lazily, stirring the air more than cooling it. The walls are lined with cracked mirrors, their edges clouded, and the scent of tobacco smoke lies thick over everything. At a corner table you spot him, Charles Pennington, a fellow archaeologist, recently returned from Sakura. He is older than you by perhaps a decade, his beard streaked with grey, his posture leaning forward as if to claim more space than his slight frame affords. He looks up as you approach, and his eyes narrow with the faintest trace of amusement. "Whitcomb," he says, gesturing to the empty chair. "Sets. You look as though you've seen a ghost." You settle across from him, laying the newspaper gently on the table. "Not a ghost. A truth. Petrie has published his surveys of Giza, erosion consistent with water, not sand. You've read it?" Pennington exhales a stream of smoke from his cigarette, shaking his head with a smile. "Ah, that again. Yes, I've read it. Fascinating numbers, precise as always. But don't mistake measurements for revelation. The plateau is full of curiosities. One mustn't leap at shadows." The word again, shadows. It stirs something uneasy in you. You lean forward. "Not shadows. Evidence." If water shaped those stones, the pyramids must predate the dynasties. They belong to an older world entirely, and the inventory stele. He cuts you off with a wave of his hand. The inventory stele is a pious fiction, a later inscription meant to glorify the temples. We all know that. As for Petrie's erosion, it proves nothing beyond the stones being old, which no one disputes. Old, yes, but not eternal. His dismissal settles like cold ash in your chest. Around you, the cafe buzzes with other voices. Frenchmen debating over mastabas, a German sketching notes on temple reliefs, but Pennington's tone drowns them all. You press gently. "And yet, if there were floods, rains greater than we know now, would that not suggest the pyramids were already standing then? That they predate Khufu?" He sighs, stirring the dregs of his coffee. "Whitcomb, you're young enough to indulge these fancies. But mark me, reputations are not built on fancies, Do you think the Royal Geographical Society will fund a theory that uproots every table of kings? Do you think the British Museum, having only just unlocked hieroglyphs with the Rosetta Stone, wishes to be told that the pharaohs built nothing at all? Nonsense, It would make fools of us all." You sit back, the chair creaking under your weight. The words sting because they hold truth. Institutions guard themselves. Prestige is currency, and certainty buys more of it than questions. Still, you cannot swallow the doubt that clings to Petrie's numbers, to the water-scarred walls of the Sphinx's enclosure. You picture them even now, the grooves running deep, as if rain had wept against stone for centuries. The conversation drifts after that, Pennington describing his finds at Sakura, a painted coffin lid, a small herd of beads, but you hardly listen. The newspaper lies heavy against your thigh, and with it the sense that the spark lit yesterday is already under threat of being smothered. When you leave the cafe, the sun has risen high, burning white against the pale buildings. The streets shimmer with heat. You feel it pressing into your skull, a weight that echoes Pennington's words. Reputations are not built on fancies. That evening, you find yourself in conversation with Ahmed, the boy who often carries water for you. He is scarcely 15, his eyes bright and watchful. As he pours cool water into your clay jar, you ask lightly, "Have you ever been to the plateau, to see the pyramids?" He glances up quickly, then down again. "Once, with my uncle. We sold dates to the men working there." "And the Sphinx?" You press. His hands falter. The water splashes slightly. "It is old," he says simply. "Older than all things. My uncle says it was there before the sand. Before the kings." The words echo exactly what you believe, yet the tone in which he says them is not one of wonder but of caution. You sense his unease, the way his eyes flick to the gate as if others might hear. "Do you not believe it?" you ask softly. He hesitates, then whispers, "Belief is dangerous. The English, the French, they do not want old stories. They want gold, statues, things they can carry away." If you speak of what was before, they say you lie. His voice fades. You let the silence sit between you, heavy as the heat. Later, alone in the courtyard, you think of both conversations. The scholars' scorn, the boys' fear. Between them, a pattern emerges. Push back not from ignorance but from threat. To question the pyramid's age is to question power itself. The museums, the societies, the nations that claim Egypt's past as though it were a possession. The lamp flickers low. The blanket lies across your knees once more. The night air cools, smelling faintly of smoke and river. You feel the weight of resistance pressing from all sides. Doubt coils not only in your colleagues' voices, but in your own chest. What if they are right? What if you are only chasing shadows? But then, unbidden, an image rises, the deep grooves along the Sphinx's enclosure wall. Rough beneath your hand the day you first touched them. They did not feel like shadows. They felt like water, real and patient. You breathe deeply, letting the air fill your lungs. The resistance is real, but so is the evidence. Both press against you, shaping you as surely as water shapes stone. The night grows quiet again. Somewhere beyond the courtyard, the Nile carries its eternal current, whispering of floods long past. You sit in that silence, the voices of doubt still echoing, yet something inside you refusing to yield. The following days pass in a hush of repetition, morning heat rising with the sun, dust drifting in sheets across the rooftops. The same cafes, the same voices, the same arguments folded neatly like the creases of yesterday's newspaper. You listen, you nod, you smile, yet inside you remain elsewhere, standing in shadow, one hand pressed against stone scarred by water. The pushback has not left you. Pennington's condescension lingers like a bitter taste. Havisham's long Ago lectures hum in memory. And even Ahmed's hushed warning has grown heavy in your chest. But it is precisely in this weight that something begins to take shape. Doubt can crush, yes, but it can also define. Like a chisel, sharp in the hand, it cuts away until what remains is not confusion, but a choice. On the third morning, you wake before dawn. The courtyard is dark, the stars fading toward pale. The city lies hushed in the softest hours. Only the occasional call of a donkey, the rustle of palm leaves overhead. You sit at the table, notebook open, lamp burning faintly. The air is cooler than it will be later, and you breathe it in as if to steady yourself. Your pencil hovers above the page. At first, only fragments come, half-thoughts, broken words. Then, slowly, sentences take form. The pyramids are older than dynasties. Evidence lies in stone, in water, in silence unmeasured. Opposition is expected, yet truth does not depend upon acceptance. My task is only to follow where it leads. You pause, reading the lines again. They are not perfect, not elegant, but they anchor something inside you. The decision is not loud. It does not arrive like thunder. It comes softly, like the Nile's current, steady and unrelenting. You will go to the plateau. You will look with your own eyes, measure with your own hand, walk the enclosures where rain once fell. You will not wait for permission. When the city wakes, you rise with it. The streets stir with life, women drawing water, men driving carts. The cry of vendors weaving through the alleys. You slip among them with a small pack slung across your shoulder. Inside, only essentials and notebooks, a measure of string, a compass and the newspaper folded once more, Patri's survey tucked within. The carriage ride out of Cairo is long, jolting over uneven tracks. The air grows clearer with each mile, the city's noise thinning until only wind and hoofbeats remain. Ahead, the horizon sharpens, and there they are, emerging as if conjured, the pyramids, massive, immovable, pale against the sky. You feel the breath catch in your throat. They do not shrink with approach. Instead, they grow impossibly larger. Each step drawing you closer to a geometry that feels both human and inhuman. The heat presses against your back, yet still you walk forward. Boots sinking in sand, eyes fixed upon the rising bulk of stone. At last, you reach the Sphinx. The creature's face is weathered, nose broken, eyes staring eternally east. Its body lies deep within the enclosure, the walls scarred and gouged with vertical fissures. You descend the worn steps, entering the hollowed silence. Here it is again, that unmistakable mark of water. Not the fine, horizontal sanding of wind, but deep, uneven grooves, as if carved by years of rainfall. You trace them with your fingers, the stone rough, the shadows deep, Each groove whispers of storms no pharaoh ever recorded, rains that fell in an age before desert. You kneel, pressing your palm flat against the cool wall. The sand shifts softly under your knees. For a moment you close your eyes, letting the silence envelop you. No Pennington here, no Havisham, no councils or societies. Only stone and sky and the weight of millennia, When you open your eyes, the decision feels sealed, quiet, irrevocable. You will follow this path, no matter how others sneer. You will write what you see. You will let the stone speak, whether or not the world wishes to listen. The day stretches long. You measure, you sketch, you walk the plateau until your legs ache. The sun burns, the sand scorches, yet still you press on, filling your notebook with lines and numbers. Each mark on the page is an anchor, a step deeper into commitment. By evening, the sky glows amber, shadows lengthening across the sand. You sit at the base of the pyramid of Khafra, the stone warm against your back. From this vantage, the desert spreads infinite, the horizon aflame with setting sun. You open your notebook once more, writing slowly, deliberately. This is my decision, to seek, to see, to record. Let others dismiss. Let them scoff. Truth endures as stone endures, shaped by water, shaped by time. The words steady you, They do not silence the voices of doubt, but they give them their place. Noise at the edge of the page, nothing more. When the final light fades, you rise, brush the sand from your coat, and begin the long walk back toward Cairo. The air cools quickly after sunset, and above you the stars return, bright and countless. They remind you of the same stars that shone when these stones were first cut, when rain still fell, when the world was younger than history admits. Each step carries the weight of decision, but also its cost. There will be resistance ahead, arguments sharper than Pennington's, dismissals harsher than Havisham's, perhaps even silence from those who cannot afford to hear. Yet tonight you feel no fear, only the certainty of one who has touched stone and heard it speak. The Nile glimmers faint in the distance, winding its way through shadow, You follow its line, notebook under your arm, resolve settled like a quiet flame within you. Tomorrow will bring questions, Tonight belongs to decision. The days that follow fall into a rhythm, each one alike on the surface, yet carrying its own subtle difference, as though the desert were turning the same stone in its hand and showing you a new facet each morning. You rise before the city stirs, before the muezzins call from the minarets. The streets are hushed, lanterns flickering, donkeys shifting in their sleep. With your small satchel slung over your shoulder, you make your way through Cairo's gates and out into the openness beyond. Each journey begins in shadow, the horizon paling as you travel. By the time the pyramids come into view, the sun has crowned the desert, its heat already rising from the sand. At first you walk in silence, your breath steady, your eyes fixed on the line where stone meets sky. Soon the world behind you fades, the clamor of vendors, the chatter of scholars, the endless discussions in cafes. Here there is only the desert, vast and bare, and the forms of monuments that rise from it like mountains placed by another hand. Your notebook becomes your companion, Each line you draw, each number you jot, each phrase you sketch down feels less like invention and more like listening. The stones do not speak quickly, they do not yield to impatience. But if you wait, if you place your palm against them and measure the shadows they cast, they begin to reveal their language. You linger at the Sphinx enclosure for hours at a time. The walls hold water's memory more clearly than words ever could. You crouch low to trace the grooves. You climb the ledges to compare depth. You pace along the base counting your steps. String stretched between your hands. Wind scars your skin, sand works its way into your boots, yet still you circle, recording. At midday, you sit in the scant shade of stone, sipping slowly from your flask. The water is warm but welcome. From here, the horizon shimmers in heat, broken only by the silhouettes of camels and their drivers crossing the distance. Their bells tinkle faintly, a sound that seems to arrive from another century. Sometimes you are joined by Ahmed, who comes quietly, bringing figs or bread wrapped in cloth. He does not press you with questions. He only watches as you measure, his gaze flicking between your string and the scarred walls. One afternoon, when you pause to rest, he gestures at the grooves. Rain, he says softly, in English. His accent carries the river's cadence. Long ago, before desert, you meet his eyes surprised, and he only shrugs, as if such knowledge were not remarkable but obvious. For him, the land has always spoken plainly. It is only scholars who refuse to hear. Other days you venture further, walking the causeways, descending into the half-buried temples, ducking beneath massive lintels still squared as though cut yesterday. Each site holds whispers, the alignment of stones, the erosion patterns, the depth of sand that buries one block and spares another. It is not one clue that convinces you, but the steady accumulation of them all. At night, you return to Cairo wary yet alive, notebook heavy with fresh pages. You sit beneath your lamp, tracing your sketches again, comparing numbers, cross-referencing glyphs. The city outside hums. Carriages rattling, voices rising, music drifting through latticed windows. But you remain within your circle of light, pen moving slowly, patiently. The journey is not only outward, but inward. With each passing day your certainty deepens. Doubt still flickers at the edges, fed by the memory of Pennington's smirk, by the imagined laughter of councils in London. Yet the more you walk the stones, the less those voices matter, They become like echoes fading across the desert, present but powerless. One evening, you climb the lower tiers of Khufu's pyramids, finding a perch where you can sit above the plateau. From here, the desert stretches endless in every direction, the air cooling swiftly as the sun slips behind the horizon. You open your notebook, but for once you do not write. Instead you listen. The silence here is unlike any other, thick, vast, ancient. It fills your lungs, presses against your skin, settles in your bones. You close your eyes, and for a moment you imagine this place not as desert but as green plain, rain falling in sheets, pools gathering at the base of stone, the air heavy with storm, the ground soft beneath your feet. You see figures moving in that rain, not pharaohs in linen crowns, but older ones, nameless, setting stone upon stone as water trickles around their ankles. You open your eyes, heart steady, breath slow. The vision fades, but the certainty lingers. This is not imagination. It is memory, carried in the rock itself. Another day takes you to the Valley Temple. Its blocks cut from red granite, immense, seamless. You press your hand against one, tracing the fine joint where two stones meet without gap. The surface is smooth, almost polished, but here too water has left its trace, subtle pitting, faint grooves. The marks of time not written in scrolls but carved by rain. You step back, sketching quickly. The proportions anchoring themselves beneath your pencil. Ahmed watches, his brow furrowed. They will not believe, he says quietly. Perhaps not, you reply. Yet the words do not trouble you. Belief is not the measure of truth. Your journey extends beyond days, into weeks, into a rhythm that reshapes your life. Cairo becomes merely a resting place, the plateau your true home. Dust clings to your coat. Sunburn darkens your skin. Calluses grow on your hands from constant climbing and measuring. Still you press on, and through it all, a calm deepens. The decision you made is no longer fragile. It has become habit, bone, breath. You do not argue with stones, you walk among them, you listen, you record. That is enough. One evening after a long day of work, you sit again in your courtyard. The lamp glows softly, the air cool with night. You open your notebook, now thick with pages, and read back through them. The early sketches seem tentative, uncertain. But page by page, line by line, the confidence grows. Your notes have become less a question and more a record. You pause at a line you wrote weeks ago. Truth endures as stone endures. You trace it with your finger, and for the first time, you feel its full weight. The journey has not ended. In truth, it may never end. The stones will continue to whisper long after you have fallen silent. But for now, you have walked among them, you have listened, and you have begun to translate their language. Above you, the stars gleam cold and steady, The same stars that watched when rains carved the Sphinx. Rates. The same stars that watched when hands older than history raised the first stones of Giza. You lean back, closing your eyes. Your body aches, Rates, but your spirit rests easy. The journey is not finished, but you are no longer at its beginning. You are walking its middle, steady and unhurried, step by step. And tomorrow, the stones will be waiting. The evening is cool in Cairo, the kind of coolness that slips in after a long day of heat. Rates. When the dust settles and the city exhales, you sit in the courtyard of your lodging, the gas lamp flickering against whitewashed walls. Rates. The scent of jasmine drifting in from a neighbor's garden. Your notebook lies open on the table, but for once you are not writing. You are waiting. Rates. Ahmed arrives first, carrying a bundle wrapped in coarse cloth. He sets it down gently beside you, then sits without a word. Rates. His hands rest on his knees, scarred from years of work. His gaze turned to the sky, where the first stars have begun to show. It is time. He asks at last, his voice quiet, not accusing, not surprised. You nod. The decision has been with you for weeks now. A steady current beneath each day of measuring and sketching. To follow the evidence farther. Rates. To leave the comfort of Cairo and go deeper into the desert. You had known it would come to this. Ahmed leans forward and unwraps the bundle. Rates. Inside is a brass compass, old but polished, its lid dented, its glass a little fogged at the edges. He pushes it across the table toward you. Rates. My father's, he says simply. He carried it on the caravan to Siwa. When the sand was too deep, when the stars were hidden, Rates, this was his guide. You hesitate, then lift it, feeling its weight in your palm. The needle quivers, then steadies. Rates. Pointing north as faithfully as it has for decades. You close the lid with a soft click. I cannot take this from you, you murmur. Rates. It is not from me, he replies, eyes steady. It is for the journey, for what you seek. There is nothing more to say. Rates. You slip the compass into your pocket, its weight settling against your side like a promise. Later, Pennington joins you. Rates. He arrives with the scent of tobacco clinging to his coat, his hat in his hand. He sits heavily, sighing. Rates. As though the act of lowering himself into the chair costs more effort than it should. His eyes, normally sharp and quick, seem softer tonight. Rates. You're set on this, then? He asks, though his tone carries no hope of persuasion. I am, you answer. He studies you for a long moment. Rates. Then reaches into his breast pocket and draws out a folded letter. The paper is creased, the seal unbroken. He places it on the table. Rates. Sliding it toward you with 2 fingers. For the society, he says. If you do not return, they'll want to know what you've done. Rates. What you've found. They may not believe you, but at least your words will outlast the sand. You touch the letter but do not lift it. Rates. Its weight is different from the compass, heavier in another way. The future it carries is uncertain, yet undeniable. Pennington leans back. Rates. Exhaling smoke from a cigarette he has just lit. The glow illuminates his face in brief flashes. You know, he says quietly. Rates. Petrie himself nearly bankrupted his health out here. Fever, exhaustion, eyes ruined by the sun. You've read his notes. You know what this land does. I know, you say. He nods, not satisfied but resigned. He does not press you further. Instead, he raises his cigarette slightly, a half salute, before crushing it in the ashtray. Then go. Rates. And may the desert be kinder to you than it was to him. The night deepens. The city's sounds soften to murmurs, distant and low. Rates. You remain in the courtyard after both men have left, the lamp sputtering, the stars bright above. You place the compass on the notebook. Rates. Beside the letter, and rest your hand over both. The metal is cool, the paper rough. 2 anchors, one to guide your steps, the other to record them. Rates. The following morning, your farewells continue. Rates. You walk to the cafe where you have spent so many evenings listening to arguments about dynasties and timelines. The owner, Rates, a man with silver in his beard and a towel always draped over his shoulder, greets you with a puzzled frown. You go, he asks. Rates, as you order one last cup of thick, sweet coffee. For a time, you answer. He nods, pours carefully, and sets the cup before you. Rates. Then he disappears into the back and returns with a small clay jar, its surface chipped, its lid sealed with wax. He presses it into your hand. Rates. Dates, he says. They keep, and when the sun is high, they remind you of shade. You thank him, though words feel inadequate. Rates. The jar is small, but the gesture is not. The rest of the day passes in quiet preparations, yet it is the goodbyes that stay with you. Rates. A young porter who has carried your satchels more times than you can count bows awkwardly, and presses a scrap of cloth into your hand. Embroidered with his sister's careful stitches. Rates. A simple pattern of blue waves. For luck, he whispers. A French scholar you barely know shakes your hand more firmly than necessary, muttering. Rates. Bring back something they cannot dismiss. And finally, a boy who sells figs at the corner where you often pass stops you with a grin. He offers a fig, the ripest in his basket. When you reach for coins, he shakes his head. Gift, he says in halting English. Rates. You remember me. That night your belongings lie packed. Linen shirts folded, water flasks wrapped in wet cloth, paraffin lamp secured. Your notebook rests at the top of the satchel, the compass beside it, the letter tucked carefully inside. You lie down, the city hushed around you. Rates. Your body still, your mind steady. Tomorrow will carry you beyond familiar walls, beyond cafes and courtyards, beyond the comfort of voices you know. Rates. But tonight you rest in the circle of farewells, compass, letter, cloth, jar, fig, all small objects. Rates. Yet each one a thread tying you back to this place, to these people, to this moment. And as sleep takes you, you realize goodbyes are not endings. They are offerings. The desert awaits, and you will not walk into it empty-handed. Morning begins before the sun has lifted itself over Cairo. Rates. You wake to the smell of damp stone, the faintest trace of last night's cooling air still lingering in your room. The city is hushed. Rates. Its usual bustle subdued at this early hour. You dress carefully, each layer deliberate linen shirt, loose trousers. Rates. Boots still dusted with sand from your last walk to the plateau. The satchel waits by the door, already heavy with compass, notebook, letter, lamp. Rates. And the quiet offerings pressed into your hand during those last goodbyes. When you step outside, the air is cool against your skin. Rates. But you know how swiftly it will change. Cairo in September does not grant softness for long. The streets are damp with dew, cobblestones darkened. Rates. And the smell of horses and dust mingles with the faint aroma of baking bread from a nearby stall. Ahmed is waiting with a cart. Two donkeys stand patiently, their ears twitching at flies. He nods in greeting but does not speak. Words at this hour feel unnecessary. Rates. You climb aboard, the satchel at your feet, and together you rattle through the still, sleeping city. The gas lamps along the boulevard glow faintly. Rates. Halos shimmering in the damp air. Minarets rise pale against the brightening sky. Rates. And as you pass the Ezbekia Gardens, you catch the faint rustle of palm fronds stirring in the wind. Rates. A steamship moored along the river gives a low whistle, and the sound vibrates in your chest like the beginning of a hymn. The train station looms ahead, its iron girders catching the early light, its platform already stirring with movement. Rates. Travelers wrapped in cloaks cluster with bundles at their feet. Porters call out, their voices echoing under the vaulted roof. Rates. The scent here is a tangle, coal smoke, sweat, spices from someone's tightly packed basket of goods. Rates. Ahmed helps you down, then lifts the satchel to your shoulder. His hands rest on it for a moment longer than needed. When you turn, his gaze is steady, the lines at the corners of his eyes deep in the lamplight. You will listen to the desert, he says. Not a question. Rates. Not advice, simply a truth he expects you to keep. I will. You answer. He nods, satisfied. Then, with a small gesture, he steps back. Rates. Leaving you to the flow of porters and passengers. The separation is quiet, unmarked by flourish. You do not wave. He does not follow. Rates. Farewells in Egypt, you have learned, are often woven into the fabric of life itself. Your ticket is already in hand. Third class. Rates. For a train that will take you westward toward the edge of Cairo's sprawl, and out to the stations where the desert opens like an unrolled scroll. Rates. The paper is smudged, its ink faint, yet the date is clear, September 17, 1889. You board. Rates. Climbing into the wooden carriage where benches line the walls. The air smells of oil and leather. Rates. The faint tang of coal dust drifting in through the open window. Beside you, A family settles, their belongings tied in cloth bundles. Rates. A copper kettle swinging from one strap. Across from you sits a young man in a worn jacket, his hat tipped low. Rates. A satchel nearly as battered as your own. The whistle blows. The engine exhales a plume of steam, and with a lurch, the train begins to move. Cairo slides past. Walls painted white, roofs crowded with washing lines, boys running barefoot alongside until the speed leaves them behind. Rates. Soon the city gives way to fields, green strips fed by the Nile, dotted with figures bending low to cut stalks of grain. Rates. The smell of damp earth reaches you, strong and rich, and for a moment you close your eyes, breathing it in deeply. Rates. The rhythm of the train settles into your body, metal wheels clattering, wooden benches creaking, the steady pull forward. You lean back, notebook in hand, though you do not write yet. Instead you watch the land shift. Irrigation ditches glint in the light, palms sway in clumps. Rates. And beyond them the desert begins. A line at first pale yellow against green, then wider, bolder. Rates. Until the fields are only patches clinging close to the river's reach. The young man across from you lifts his head. His eyes are dark, Rates, his face thin, wind-chapped. He studies you for a moment before speaking. English, he asks. Yes, you reply. He nods. Rates, as though confirming something to himself. I go to Fayum, he says, his accent marked but clear. Work in irrigation. And you hesitate. To say, the pyramids, feels too small, too narrow. To say, the truth, feels too grand. So you settle on, I go to learn. The man smiles faintly. Then desert is good teacher, he says and leans back, closing his eyes. Rates. The train carries you for hours. Vendors move through the cars, offering tea poured from brass pots, flatbread wrapped in paper. Rates. Dates strung on cords. You take tea, the glass hot against your fingers, the sweetness cutting through the dust that clings already to your throat. The warmth spreads, soothing, steadying. By afternoon, the train halts at a station where the tracks run no farther. The passengers file out. Rates. Their bundles hoisted, their animals collected. You step down into sunlight fierce and unrelenting, the platform shimmering with heat. The smell here is sharper, sand-baked, sweat drying, coal smoke still clinging. Your next leg will not be by rail. Camels wait. Rates. Their long necks swaying, their sides shifting with each breath. A caravan forms slowly, travelers pairing with guides, loads being balanced. Rates. Your own arrangements were made through Ahmed, a place in a small group heading toward the Fayum Depression. Rates. From which you can branch to older sites less visited by Patri's teams. Your camel kneels reluctantly, groaning as you approach. The handler. Rates. A man with sun-cracked skin and a white turban wound tightly, gestures you aboard. The saddle creaks under your weight, the leather warm from the sun. When the animal rises, the motion jolts you sharply, pulling your stomach upward. You grip the wooden handle, adjusting, steadying yourself. Rates. The caravan moves. Hooves sink into sand, bells tinkling softly. The air is hotter now, shimmering, the horizon blurred by waves of heat. Yet above, Rates, the sky is vast, a clear expanse of pale blue unmarred by cloud. The rhythm shifts again, not the clatter of wheels. Rates. But the swaying rise and fall of the camel's stride, slow and enduring. By evening, you have left the green edge of the Nile entirely. Rates. The desert unfolds endless and unbroken, save for ridges of limestone and low hills darkening in the setting sun. The caravan halts at a well. Rates. The air cooler, the silence immense. You dismount, legs stiff, hands blistered from gripping the saddle. Yet beneath the ache. Rates. There is a steadiness, an awareness that you have begun. You sit near the fire that evening, sharing bread torn in rough pieces. Rates. Dates passed from hand to hand. The young man from the train sits beside you, sipping from a tin cup of water. He glances at your notebook. Rates. Then at the compass you have set beside you. You look for something. He says softly, not unkindly. I do, you answer. He nods. Rates. As though he had expected nothing less. Then he offers you a piece of bread, his hand steady in the firelight. And you realize, Rates, companions are not always chosen. Sometimes they are given, quietly, by the journey itself. The stars rise, brilliant and innumerable, each one cold and clear. You lie back on your blanket, the sand still warm beneath you, your satchel close at hand. The fire flickers low. Rates. Voices fade, and the desert breathes around you, vast, eternal, indifferent, yet somehow embracing. Your departure is complete. Cairo lies behind, a memory of lamps and courtyards. Ahead lies silent stone, and whatever truths the desert is willing to reveal. You close your eyes, your body aching but your spirit steady. Sleep comes slowly, gently, carrying you deeper into the rhythm of the road. And tomorrow, you will wake beneath the same stars that once watched builders unknown lay stone upon stone. The desert wakes before you do. You rise in the cool shadow of dawn, sand clinging to your blanket, the air still carrying the night's chill. Around you, the camp stirs slowly. Camels grumbling, handlers moving with quiet efficiency, fire rekindled with the crackle of palm fronds. The stars are fading overhead, pale against a sky already hinting at the sun's return. You drink water sparingly, the skin rough against your lips. Bread is passed, flat and dry, but filling enough. The taste is faintly smoky from last night's fire, and you chew slowly, grateful. The satchel rests at your side, a familiar weight now, no longer strange. Each morning you check its contents as though rehearsing a prayer. Compass, notebook, letter lamp, coin, fragments of dried food, all present, all necessary. When the caravan moves, you mount your camel with less awkwardness than yesterday. The sway of its gait has begun to settle into your body, a rhythm both monotonous and strangely hypnotic. The first hours pass in near silence. The desert is still cool, the sand soft underfoot. Shadows stretch long across the ground, and you watch them shift as the sun climbs higher. It is only when the heat begins to rise that you notice how profoundly the landscape has changed. Yesterday, there were still patches of green, the occasional palm, the trace of water channels clinging stubbornly to the Nile's influence. Now there is only expanse, yellow, white, ochre, sand rippling in endless folds. Here and there low ridges of limestone jut upwards, their edges broken, pale as bones. The sky arches above, enormous, a single dome of light without interruption. You are a speck within it, no more than a dark figure swaying on a moving beast. The thought should overwhelm, yet it brings a strange calm. In a city, walls press close. Here, nothing presses at all. By midday, the heat is relentless. The sun burns without mercy, each breath dry in your throat. The caravan halts briefly under the shade of a cliff, and water is poured carefully from goatskins into shallow bowls. The camels drink noisily, lips pulling at the water with eagerness. You wet a cloth and press it to your forehead, feeling the relief seep in. The young man from the train, your accidental companion, sits near you, back against the rock. His jacket is dusted white from the limestone, his hat pulled low. He catches your eye and gestures toward the horizon. Empty. Yes, he says softly. You glance outward. Empty seems an inadequate word. It is not simply the absence of trees or houses or sound. It is a fullness of silence itself, as though the desert contains more nothingness than you thought possible. Yes, you reply. He smiles faintly, though there is no humor in it. Empty teaches. You do not ask what he means. Instead, you take up your notebook, shading the page with your hand, and write a few simple lines. The silence is larger than the sky. The desert carries it like a secret too vast for men. When the caravan rises again, the land grows harsher. The sand is not soft here but broken by fields of gravel, stones sharp under the camels' hooves. The air feels different too, less forgiving. Drier, as though the wind itself has been stripped bare. You notice how your lips have cracked, how your throat feels lined with dusts. Each sip of water is measured, rationed, valued. By late afternoon, mirages appear. Shimmering pools of blue waver on the horizon, promising lakes that vanish as you near them. Your eyes ache from staring, your mind playing tricks with distance. The handler notices your gaze and shakes his head. Not water, he says simply. You nod, embarrassed at having been deceived. But even knowing the truth, the mirages continue to tug at your vision, shimmering like promises unkept. That night, the camp is set against a line of boulders, their surface is warm from the day's sun. The fire burns small, the wood scarce. You lie back, staring at the stars again. This time they feel closer, sharper, as though the desert strips away the veil between earth and skies. The young man speaks quietly beside you. In Feats there is water, real water. You will see. His words are not boast nor reassurance, Feats, simply fact. You let them settle into your mind as you drift towards sleep. The desert hums, not with sound, but with presence, Feats. You sense it around you, vast and ancient, watching. The days blend into one another, each marked by small shifts in the landscape. The dunes grow higher, steeper. At times the caravan must detour widely, curving around walls of sand that look like frozen waves. At other times, the ground is hard-packed, almost white. The camels are steps, striking sparks against stone. You learn to read small signs. The direction of wind in the ripple of sand, the faint marks of animals crossing, fox, beetle, snake. Each trace feels like a message, Feats, though you cannot yet read the language. Your body adjusts too. The ache in your legs dulls. Your hands grow calloused from the saddle, Feats. The sun no longer shocks you with its force. You expect its weight now, prepare for it, endure it. At night, the cold is equally fierce, Feats, and you pull your blanket tight, grateful for every thread. The satchel remains always near, its contents undisturbed, Feats. Yet you find yourself touching it more often. Not to check, but to remind yourself it is there, Feats. As though the satchel has become not just storage but anchor. One afternoon, as the caravan crests a low ridge, the land ahead shifts suddenly. You see not endless dunes but a depression, a hollow in the desert where green once more appears. Date palms cluster there, a thin line of water glinting faintly, the Feats. The young man points, his face unreadable. There's my place. The sight stirs something in you. Relief perhaps, though it is not yours, or maybe wonder, that such a place can exist here, Feats, surrounded by emptiness. That evening, when camp is made at the edge of this basin, you walk a little apart from the others. The palms sway softly, Feats, the air carrying a hint of moisture, almost sweet. Birds flit overhead, their wings sharp against the twilight. You kneel, touch the ground, Feats, feel damp earth under your fingers. For the first time since Cairo, you sense possibility not as idea, but as presence. The desert is not only barren, it holds hidden the memory of life. The young man sees you crouched and nods, Feats. Desert gives and takes. He says simply. You do not answer. Your hand lingers in the cool soil, the satchel heavy at your side, Feats. The journey is not over, it has only begun. But the land has shifted, and with it so have you. That night, as sleep folds over you, you dream of stone rising out of sand, blocks stacked in impossible order, their edges sharp against a sky like this one, star-strewn and eternal. You wake before dawn, heart steady, knowing the desert has begun to speak. The desert does not yield easily, even with the green of Feats behind you, Feats. The road ahead stretches barren once more. You wake each morning to the same weight, sun on your shoulders, sand under your boots, Feats. The endless rhythm of the camel shifting beneath you. At first, the routine feels almost comforting, measured, predictable, Feats. But the body keeps its own count. Your lips crack despite the cloth you keep wrapped around your face. The skin of your hands grows dry, Feats, the lines deepening like small maps etched in flesh. Your shoulders ache from the sway of riding, and when you dismount at night, Feats, your legs quiver with fatigue. Bread tastes like dust now, no matter how carefully it is warmed by the fire. The water, once cool and sweet when poured from damp cloth wrappings, grows tepid by afternoon, carrying a faint tang of leather from the skins, Feats. You ration it anyway, each swallow slow, the weight of necessity pressing heavier than thirst itself. The young man, Feats, who walks more often than he rides, notices your discomfort. One afternoon, Feats, as the sun burns fiercest and the caravan moves slowly across a wind-cut ridge, he falls into step beside your camel, Feats. You sit too stiff, he observes. You look down, unsure what to reply. Like soldier, he adds, grinning faintly, camel is not horse. You must move with him. He demonstrates, loosening his shoulders, rolling slightly with the rhythm of each step. It looks effortless. You try to imitate him, adjusting your hips and spine. The difference is subtle but real. The ache eases, Feats, the sway no longer pulls so sharply at your muscles. He nods once. Better, it is a small lesson, but it stays with you. Each day afterward, Feats, you let the camel guide your motion instead of resisting. The desert, you realize, requires less struggle, more yielding. The days blur into one another, and still the toll deepens. Your appetite shrinks under the heat rates. A handful of dates feels enough to carry you through the day, though your body craves more. Sleep comes more quickly at night, but it is lighter, often broken by the cold. You curl deeper into your blanket, listening to the faint shuffle of camels nearby, the wind scraping across stone grates. Your journal grows heavier too, not in weight but in the discipline required to open it. You write shorter lines now, less flourish, more record. Day 17d wind from west, 3 skins of water left, feet blister. Day 19 sandstorm, covered mouth eyes, young man steady, handler calm, I less so, braits. Day 20 bones on the ridge, camel, goat, hard to tell. Each entry is a tether, reminding you of who you are and why you endure, braits. But even the ink seems reluctant, smearing under the grit that finds its way into every crease. One evening, a sandstorm sweeps across the camps. It comes without warning, the horizon darkening in a curtain of gold and brown. The handler shouts, voices rising in urgent Arabic, braits. You cling to your satchel as the wind slams against you, sand stinging your face, filling your ears. You crouch low behind a boulder, braits, cloth pulled tight across your mouth. The air tastes of dust and metal, every breath shallow, braits. The storm passes after what feels like hours but is no more than minutes. Silence returns slowly, the air settling, braits, the sky reopening to show the thin arc of the moon. The camp looks scattered, blankets half buried, one tent collapsed. But no one is lost, braits, and for that you are grateful. That night you cannot sleep, you lie awake, staring at the stars, braits, their light blurred by grit still clinging to your lashes. For the first time, you feel a sharp tug of doubt. Why are you here, braits? Why leave the cool streets of London, the security of lecture halls, the familiarity of your own language? You picture the library's quiet stacks, the dust of old books, the clink of teacups in Bloomsbury cafes. All of it feels impossibly distant. The desert presses close, braits, its silence heavier than walls. The next day, the young man shows you a trick, braits. As the caravan halts near a shallow depression where thorny bushes grow, he kneels with a small blade, cutting carefully at the base of one branch, braits. He hands you the stem, pale sap beading at the cut. Chew, he says. You hesitate, then bite. The sap is bitter, almost unpleasant, but moist. It fills your mouth with a faint coolness, easing the dryness of your tongue. Desert gum, he explains. Not food, braits, but keeps mouth alive. You nod, chewing slowly, feeling the relief spread. It is not nourishment, not water, but it steadies you, braits. Another small lesson carved into memory. By the third week, your boots wear thin at the edges, the soles cracking from heat. Blisters line your feet, raw against the constant rub of sand. You wrap strips of cloth around them at night, but each morning brings fresh sting. The handler notices, braits, kneeling one evening as you remove your boots. Without words, he takes a strip of oiled leather from his own supplies, pressing it into your hand, braits. He gestures for you to cut it to size, lay it beneath the sole. The leather holds the heat differently, softening the step. It is not comfort, but it is bearable. You thank him quietly. He nods, already turning back to tend his camels. One night, after another long day of heat and silence, braits, you dream again of stone. This time, the pyramid rises not from drawings in your notebook, but from the desert itself. Blocks half buried, weathered, yet unmistakable. You reach out in the dream to touch the stone, and it is cool, damp, as though washed by rain long ago, braits. You wake with the sensation still on your fingertips. The fire is nearly out, the stars pale with approaching dawn. The young man sleeps beside you, his breath steady. You lie back, staring at the paling sky. The toll of the desert has stripped you, pared you down. Yet beneath the fatigue, braits, the doubt, you feel a quiet resolve hardening. The desert may take much, but it also gives lessons in endurance, glimpses of ancient memory. And so, you rise with the others, shoulders sore, lips cracked, but heart steady. The desert continues, and so do you. The morning begins like any other, braits. The air still holds a trace of coolness, the kind that lingers briefly before the sun takes full command. You rise stiffly, braits, shake the sand from your blanket, and sip a mouthful of water to ease the dryness of your throat. The camels groan, Handlers moving among them with practiced hands. The caravan slow to rouse but steady in its rhythm. Yet something feels different. A gap breaks. It takes you a moment to realize that one of the younger porters, a boy no older than 16, lean and quick-footed, has not risen with the others. You find him curled in his blanket, face pale, lips cracked. The handler crouches beside him, speaking softly in Arabic, voice carrying both care and resignation. The boy does not move. The caravan waits quiet, the usual murmur of preparation hushed. The young man who walks beside you kneels, placing a hand gently against the boy's shoulder. He looks up after a moment, shaking his head. Fever, he says simply. The word settles like dust. In this place, fever is not something that passes with rest or medicine. Out here, fever means weakness. Weakness means falling behind. And the desert does not wait. The handler makes the decision before anyone else can speak. He gestures firmly, pointing back toward the faint line of palms still visible on the horizon. The Oasis, a day's travel behind. His meaning is clear. The boy cannot continue forward. 2 men volunteer to take him back. The boy is lifted gently onto a camel, his body swaying, its eyes half closed. He does not protest, only breathes shallowly, a sound that is almost a sigh. You stand apart, watching. The satchel at your side feels heavier than ever. It is not your loss, not really. The boy was not family, not companion. You exchanged only nods. A few brief words in broken Arabic, laughter once when the camels balked at crossing a ridge. And yet, as you watch him being led away, you feel something slip inside you. The desert has claimed its first share. The caravan moves on. For hours you keep glancing back, though the figures soon shrink to specks, then vanish altogether. The space where the boy once walked among the others remains strangely visible, an emptiness that does not close. By midday, the sun presses hard, as though to drive the moment deeper. Your throat burns, your shoulders ache, yet your mind circles always back to the same thought: why am I here? You think of London again. Lectures, gaslight streets, the weight of books in your hands. No one there would have cared for this boy. No one would have marked his leaving. Here, too, the desert seems already to forget. And still you carry the memory of his pale face, the way his hand twitched once against the blanket as if reaching for something unseen. That night, the fire burns smaller than usual, the wood too scarce to waste. The young man sits close by, silent for a long time before he speaks. He was strong, he says softly. Stronger than me. You glance at him. There is no self-pity in his tone, only quiet observation. He will not return. You ask, though the question feels foolish the moment it leaves your lips. The young man shakes his head. Maybe, maybe not. But desert is not kind, You know this now. You nod, though your throat tightens around the words. For a while, neither of you speak. The fire crackles, sending thin smoke into the cold night air. Above, the stars scatter across the sky, indifferent. Finally, the young man leans forward, picking up a handful of sand, letting it spill slowly through his fingers. Desert takes, he says. Always takes. But sometimes it gives too. You watch the last grains fall, silent, the image settling into your mind. Sleep does not come easily. When it does, it brings dreams of stone again. This time not pyramids, but scattered blocks, half buried, eroded by water that no longer flows. In the dream, you reach for one block, but it crumbles in your hands, dissolving into sand that slips between your fingers. You wake with the taste of dust in your mouth, unsure if it is from the dream or from the desert itself. The next day is harder, not physically. The routine remains the same, your body now accustomed to the ache, the thirst, the weight of travel. But inside, something drags. You feel it in your chest, a heaviness that no water can ease. When you pause to write in your journal, the words come haltingly: day 2021 gone, fever, taken back, desert indifferent. Why am I here? You stare at the ink until it dries, the letters harsh in the lamplight. The question lingers, At first you told yourself it was for knowledge. To prove something long dismissed by others, to show that the pyramids were not simply pharaohs' monuments, but older, stranger, more mysterious. That the truth mattered. But now, Under the desert's gaze, that answer feels thin. What is knowledge to a boy fevered and carried away? What is truth to cracked lips, blistered feet? Silence stretching across the horizon. That evening, as the caravan halts by a low ridge of rock, you find yourself staring at the satchel. Its contents have not changed. Compass, notebook, letter, lamp, coin. Yet you touch each piece slowly, one by one, as though seeking new meaning. The notebook feels heavier than ever, filled with words that may one day matter, or may not. The compass points true, but cannot tell you why. The letter crinkles softly, ink faint in the lamplight, the familiar handwriting a reminder of voices far away. Your hand lingers longest on the notebook. You close it gently, set it back inside. Perhaps the desert does not care for reasons. Perhaps it demands only that you walk, endure, witness. Later, as the camp quiets, you sit alone, watching the stars. The air is sharp, almost biting. But the vastness above offers a strange calm. You think again of the boy, the way he looked that final morning. Not afraid, not struggling. Simply worn thin like a candle burning low. You breathe deeply, the desert's cold filling your lungs. The loss remains, but so does the journey. And somewhere within that tension, you sense the faintest trace of understanding. The desert is not here to justify you. You are here to learn what it means to walk across it. Tomorrow the caravan will rise again. Your body will ache, your lips will crack, and still you will go on. The first loss will remain, carried silently, not as burden but as measure. And as you settle into your blanket, stars wheeling overhead, the thought soothes you in its quiet way. You are still here, still walking, still learning. The desert has not taken you yet. The days after the boy's departure pass with a different weight. At first, you feel the absence like a hollow in the caravan's rhythm. No quick footsteps at dawn. No sudden bursts of laughter when the camels balk or stumble. The silence he left behind walks with you, and for several mornings, it presses on your shoulders heavier than the sun. But the desert does not pause for mourning. Each day begins the same. The thin smoke of rekindled fire, the bread warmed against embers, the measured sip of water before the march. You rise with the others. Your body stiff, your throat dry, and you realize that grief, like thirst, cannot be indulged too long out here. The desert does not allow it. By the fourth day, something shifts. Not a dramatic awakening, not a sudden revelation, only a quieter acceptance. You understand now that the journey is not about what you can prove, but about what you can withstand. Knowledge may come, or it may not. What matters first is endurance. That afternoon you walk for several hours instead of riding. At first, the ground burns against your boots, every step jarring your blisters. But soon the rhythm steadies. The act of walking roots you, keeps you alert to the desert's small details. You notice how the sand curves differently, where the wind has shifted, forming ridges like frozen waves. You see the faint tracks of beetles weaving across the surface, their delicate lines vanishing with the next gust. Once, you spot the print of a fox, small, precise, leading toward a low ridge. These signs feel almost like writing. A script the desert leaves for those who learn to read. The young man notices your gaze. You look like Hunter, he says, smiling faintly. Not Hunter, you reply, breath steady. Only student. He nods as if the distinction matters. That evening, you take more care with the fire. The handler shows you how to bank the embers beneath a thin layer of sand, keeping them alive so that they will spark more quickly in the morning. Your first attempt smothers the flame entirely. The second holds. You learn. The handler says simply, his voice low but approving. It is the first time he has spoken to you directly. The word carries weight. Your journal entries grow longer again. Not filled with complaint or doubt, but with observation. Day 26A, wind softer today. Sand ripples east. Learn fire banking from handler. Fox track seen by ridge. Day 27A, less bread, more dates. Chewed desert gum. Energy steady. Camel easier to ride now. Sway, feels like tide, not fight. Day 2080, stars bright as lamps. Orion clear. Desert vast, but not empty. Holds signs if you watch. Each line is still simple, but the tone has changed. Less desperate record, more recognition. You are no longer writing only to endure. You are writing to remember. The loss of the boy still lingers, but it changes shape. It is not a weight that drags you back now, but a marker that keeps you moving forward. You carry him silently in each mile, reminding yourself that your own steps are not guaranteed. The desert could claim you too, at any moment. Knowing this, each sunrise feels like a quiet gift. One afternoon, as the caravan halts for rest, the young man approaches carrying a water skin. He offers it to you first, though he has walked in the heat all morning. You take. He insists. You hesitate, then drink. The water is warm, faintly bitter but steadying. When you hand it back, he shakes his head. You must keep strength, You have reason. The words stir something inside you. For days you have questioned your reason, doubted it, dismissed it as thin, but hearing it echoed by another, spoken with such quiet certainty, makes it feel real again. I had reason, you admit softly. Now I wonder. He looks out at the horizon, where the dunes ripple under the sun. Desert takes doubt too, If you walk long enough, you consider his words, letting them settle. Perhaps he is right. Perhaps doubt, like thirst, burns itself away if you keep moving. That night, you find yourself practicing small skills without being asked. You roll your blanket tighter, so that sand slips in less easily. You wrap your cloth more carefully against your mouth, breathing through it to hold in the coolness longer, You portion your food more deliberately, saving a little for morning rather than eating all at once. These are not grand lessons, but they feel like progress. Each one is a thread binding you more closely to the journey, less as visitor, more as participant. The handler notices, A few evenings later, he hands you a small piece of dried palm fiber. He gestures toward the fire, then to your lamp. You understand, He is teaching you how to light it with ember rather than wasting precious oil. It takes several tries. Your hands clumsy, the fiber catching too quickly or not at all. But finally, the ember glows steady, and you coax it into the lamp's wick. The small flame blooms, warm and steady against the night. The handler nods once. Approval again, though unspoken. You sit with the lamp beside you, its glow soft on your notebook. You write by its light, the flame a reminder of both fragility and persistence. The desert feels different now, Still harsh, still vast, but no longer only an enemy. It has become a teacher, patient and unyielding, Each day it strips something from you. Comfort, certainty, ease. But in return, it leaves something else: resilience, skill, humility. You think again of the pyramids, those impossible stones rising from the sand. If they are older than pharaohs, older than history itself, then perhaps they were built by hands that also endured this kind of stripping. Not kings commanding, but people walking, learning, adapting, builders who understood that the desert gives nothing freely, but teaches those who listen. The thought steadies you, Perhaps you are not here to prove, but to learn, to carry that learning back, even if no one believes. One evening, after the fire has burned low, you sit beside the young man and speak aloud words you have only written before. I will see it through, you say quietly. He looks at you, searching your face in the firelight. You have chosen, he replies. Yes, you breathe. I have chosen. The words are simple, but as you speak them, you feel a shift inside. Not dramatic, not triumphant, but steady. The doubt that has clung like dust begins to fall away. What remains is resolve. The desert has not beaten you, it has shaped you. You draw your blanket tighter, lie back against the sand. Above, the stars are endless, steady, indifferent. Yet for the first time, you do not feel small beneath them. You feel part of their silence, part of their endurance. And as sleep draws near, you sense something else, the faintest whisper of anticipation. Whatever lies ahead, stones, ruins, truth, or only more sand, you are ready to walk toward it. The loss remains, but so does the resolve, both carried together, both shaping the road ahead. And in that balance you find peace. The days gather into a rhythm that feels both endless and strangely sharpening. Every morning begins the same, and yet each holds its own small measures of survival. You rise before the heat, draw your cloth tight, tighten the strap of your pack. You check your water skin with care, squeezing the sides, weighing it in your palm. 3 measured mouthfuls at dawn, Brates 3 at midday, 1 at dusk if you dare. Always counting, always rationing. The handler has drilled it into you. You do not drink when you want, Brates. You drink when you must. At first you resented it. The way thirst gnawed. The way your lips cracked. But now you see the sense of it, Brates. To drink too freely is to court collapse. To endure thirst is to purchase distance. Distance, that is how the caravan speaks of the desert, Brates, not in days, not in maps, but in numbers of paces, of dunes, of hours endured. One morning, Brates. The young man tells you that from Cairo you have come 80 leagues. The words stagger you. You think of the narrow streets, the gas lamps, Brates, the bustle of cellars. 80 leagues. A world away. You had not noticed the measure accumulate. Step by step, mile by mile, Brates. You have crossed into another existence entirely. By the 20th day beyond Cairo, the caravan reaches a well, Brates. It is little more than a ring of stones, half buried, the water inside stale and bitter. But it is water, and men fall to their knees to drink, Brates. The camels groan as the buckets are lowered, their long necks straining for the wetness they can smell. The handler warns you, Brates. 1 gourd only. You obey. The water is warm, tasting of iron, but it settles into your body like mercy, Brates. Around the well you see the traces of countless other caravans. Broken rope, discarded sandals, ash from old fires, Brates. This place is not marked on the maps you studied in Cairo. Yet here it is, solid, undeniable, a threshold between exhaustion and continuance, Brates. You write in your notebook, well of stones, day 20, 80 leagues gone, water bitter yet life itself, count 11 skins filled, flour half remaining, Brates. Dates nearly gone. You close the book carefully, knowing these numbers matter as much as the words. From then on, Brates, the days are measured not only in miles but in dwindling supplies. Each sack of flour grows lighter. Each date eaten is marked in the young man's tolly, scratched on a small slate he carries. 23 left, he mutters one evening, showing you the figures. Enough, you ask. He shrugs. Enough if no storm, enough if no camel fails. The desert, you realize, Brates, does not deal in certainty, only in if. You begin to learn the art of counting distance by the stars. At night, when the others sleep, Brates. The young man shows you how to fix Orion's shoulder against the horizon, how to measure its slow rise against the hours. 1 night's march equals so many breadths of movement. The sky becomes a clock, a ruler, a calendar. Its precision steadies you, Brates. In Cairo you had trusted timetables, bells, the ticking of pocket watches. Here you trust only the stars and the burn in your legs, Brates. On the 27th day, the desert changes. The sand grows darker, streaked with stone. Low ridges rise like frozen waves, their edges jagged, Brates. Their shadows long. The wind whistles differently through them, carrying not only dust, but the faint scent of something mineral. Ancient, Brates. The handler calls it the borderland. Beyond it, he says, lies the plateau your heart stirs. This, then, is the threshold, Brates. For weeks you have walked only through sameness. Dune upon dune, sky upon sky. Now the land itself shifts. Something older lies ahead, Brates. That night, the caravan camps in a shallow hollow, sheltered from the wind by black rock. The fire burns hotter here, its flames leaping higher, Brates, as if the stones themselves feed it. You write by its light, day 27. Land changing, stone beneath sand. Handler says plateau near. Flour, Brates, once 15. Water 7 skins. We ration 3 mouthfuls morning, 3 noon, 1 night. Miles beyond count, yet feel near, Brates. The act of writing steadies you. Each number anchors you. Each tolly proof that you are still within the boundary of reason, Brates. The next march is the hardest yet. The sand grows coarse, mixed with gravel that cuts into your soles. The camels groan louder, their hooves slipping, Brates. The sun beats not only with heat but with glare, reflecting off the stone like a mirror. For the first time, you doubt whether the beasts will hold, Brates. One stumbles, nearly falling. Men rush to lift its load, to coax it onward. The handler does not shout. He only lays a hand on its neck, but waits until its breathing steadies, and then gestures. Step by step, the camel moves again. You watch this in silence, understanding. Here, nothing is wasted, not strength, not water, not anger. All is measured, all conserved, At midday, the young man offers you a strip of dried meats. You hesitate, knowing rations are thin. You need, he says simply. Mouthfuls are numbers too. If you lose strength, numbers fail. You take it, chew slowly. The salt burns your tongue, but the taste steadies your stomach. By the 30th day, the plateau rises ahead. It does not reveal itself suddenly. First there are only low rises, black stone against gold sand. Then, as you crest a ridge at dawn, you see it a vast table of rock, stretching flat and dark against the sky, as though some ancient hand had laid it there to cover the earth. The handler points with his staff. There, he says. The word is not triumphant, it is factual, steady. There. You stand for a long time gazing. The plateau looks lifeless, unyielding. Yet something in its stillness calls to you, Perhaps this is what you have come for, not proof, not revelation, but this crossing itself. From the world you knew into one far older, You do not yet see the stones, but you feel their presence. The threshold has been crossed. That night, the air grows cooler. The stars blaze brighter. The caravan rests at the base of the plateau, and though your body aches, your spirit is restless, You sit long after the others sleep, staring at the looming wall of stone. You think of Cairo, of libraries and lectures, of voices debating dates and dynasties. All of that seems distant now. What matters is here the numbers of skins left, the tally of dates, the counting of stars. The desert has stripped away argument and left only endurance. And tomorrow you will climb. For the first time, anticipation stirs not only in your mind but in your body. Your hands itch to touch the rock, to feel its texture, to know what secrets lie beyond. The desert has carried you to the threshold. The rest will be revealed in the days ahead. You close your notebook, bank the fire, and lie down on the cooling sand. Above you the constellations turn slowly, steady as ever. You count them as you drift towards sleep, each one a marker of distance, each one proof that you are still walking. And when your eyes close, you dream not of thirst or of loss, but of stone, endless, ancient stone. The morning begins with chill. You wake before the sun, when the desert still holds the night's breath of cold. Your blanket is damp with dew, though the air is dry, and your fingers ache as you fold it. You notice the others are slower too. Men rub their arms, blow on their hands, glance uneasily at the black cliff looming above. The plateau rises sheer and unmoving, a wall of stone blotting out the horizon. In the moonlight it had seemed distant, patient. But in dawn's grey light it feels oppressive, close, as if it has waited centuries for this moment. The handler says little. He moves among the camels, checking straps, tightening ropes. His silence is heavier than words. The first part of the climb is not truly a climb, but a long ascent over broken ground. The sand gives way to gravel, then to slabs of dark limestone. Each step harder than the last. Your boots scrape, your calves burn. The camels stumble unused to the sharp footing. You lean into the incline, lungs already short. The young man walks at your side silent, carrying the slate with his precious tallies. He grips it tightly, as if numbers alone might anchor him. By midday, sweat runs freely down your neck. The air is hotter here, reflecting off the stone. The sun presses against you like a hand. You take measured sips of water, though every fiber of you longs to drain the skin dry. Still you climb. By the second day on the plateau's flank, the caravan begins to falter. One of the camels refuses to rise after a rest. Its long neck arches, so its eyes roll. The handler kneels beside it, strokes its flank, but the beast groans low and will not move. The men argue. Some say leave it, some say lighten its load. At last, the handler cuts free two of the heavier sacks. Flour spills slightly as they shift it to other animals. The camel is left behind, still breathing, its eyes half closed. You do not watch long. The sight unsettles you more than you expect. In Cairo, loss was abstract, a failed theory, a ruined draft. Here it is flesh and bone, left to the sun. The path steepens. You are forced to use your hands now, fingers seeking cracks in the rock, boots scraping for purchase. The straps of your pack bite into your shoulders. Each movement feels heavier than the last. Once you slip. Your knee strikes the stone. A sharp pain shooting upward. You cling to the rock, heart pounding. For a moment you think of falling, tumbling backward into endless sky. The young man grabs your arm, steadying you. He says nothing, only nods once. The silence of his gesture carries more weight than words. That night, you camp on a narrow ledge. There is barely space for the men to lie flat. The fire burns small, its smoke curling against the cliff face. You chew dry bread, swallow a mouthful of water. The handler says, "Half the climb tomorrow." Half. The word should bring comfort. Instead it sits heavy. You wonder how much strength remains in your body, how many more paces you can endure. Above you, the cliff face blots out half the stars. For the first time you feel shut away from the sky. On the third day, the wall takes its toll. Your shoulders throb with every pull. Your throat burns. Your lips are cracked, bleeding when you lick them. The sun rises and falls, but time loses meaning. It is only stone, step after step. At one point you hear a muffled cry behind. Turning, you see one of the porters collapse. His bundle rolls down the slope, scattering flour into the wind. Men rush to him, but he does not rise. His chest heaves, his eyes roll white. They carry him to the shade of a rock. The handler crouches beside him, places a hand over his mouth. After a moment, he shakes his head. There are no words. No prayer, no farewell. The body is left where it fell, the desert already gathering it. You stand motionless, staring. A hollowness grows in your chest, deeper than exhaustion. Why are you here? For what proof, for what stone? The pyramids themselves seem far unreal. Only this wall is real, this wall and your weakness. You think of London, of warm rooms and quiet libraries. You wonder if the scholars who mocked you were right. If the stones belong to their pharaohs, let them have them. Why must you pay in blood and breath? For the first time, you think of turning back. But there is no back. The path is too steep. The supplies too thin. To retreat would be to perish. The handler knows it. The young man knows it. And now you know it too. So you climb. Each step becomes smaller, more deliberate. You stop thinking of the summit. You think only of the next handhold, the next breath, the next heartbeat. The wall has stripped you of ambition, of certainty, of pride. What remains is bare survival. That night, you lie flat on the stone, staring upward. The stars are faint, hidden by haze. The air is cold now, biting into your bones. Your hands are raw, blistered, your muscles trembling. You are empty, hollow. The young man sets down his slate beside you. You glance at it. The numbers blur in the firelight. Still counting. You whisper, he nods. Always. You want to ask him why. Why keep tally when the desert erases all? But you do not. You understand now. Counting is survival. Each mark is proof against despair. At dawn, the fourth day, the wall reaches its worst. The cliff face narrows, forcing the caravan into single file. The rock is slick with some hidden mineral, your hands sliding, your boots scrabbling. The handler drives iron stakes into cracks, ties ropes. You grip them until your fingers cramp. The sun glares white. The air feels thin, it's burning in your lungs. At one point your strength fails. Your arms tremble, your grip loosens. You dangle, suspended. The rope digs into your chest. For a moment, you think of letting go, of falling into silence. Then a voice, not loud but steady, reaches you. Hold. It is the handler. His eyes are fixed on you, calm, unwavering. His hand rests on the rope, steadying it. You close your eyes, breathe once, twice, and find purchase again. Somehow you pull upward. When the sun finally sets that day, the caravan reaches a wide ledge. Flat ground at last. The men sink to their knees. The camels collapse, groaning. You drop your pack, every muscle screaming. The handler lights a small fire. Its smoke curls against the dark sky. You sit apart, staring at the vast stone face still above. The summit is not yet reached, but you have endured the worst. You have met the wall, and though it nearly broke you, you are still breathing. For now, that is enough. You lie back on the stone, the fire's warmth fading, and let sleep take you. Not triumph, not certainty, only breath returning. Fragile but steady. The wall still waits, but you are not lost. Not yet. The dawn comes pale and thin, almost reluctant. You wake on the ledge, your body stiff as stone. Every joint aches, every muscle trembles. You do not move at first. The thought of standing feels impossible. You lie still, Feats, listening to the faint crackle of embers beside you, the low groans of camels as they stir. Your lips are parched, Feats. Your tongue is dry against your teeth. You force yourself upright, though the motion makes your vision swim. The plateau still rises above you, Feats, sheer and unrelenting, as if mocking your struggle. The handler is already awake. He kneels by the ropes, testing knots, Feats, running calloused fingers over the fibers. The night's cold has stiffened them. Some strands are frayed, worn thin from stone and strain. He frowns, pulls out a pouch and begins unwinding spare cord. You watch, barely comprehending. The young man sits close, slate in his lap, Feats, scratching numbers with a piece of chalk. The sound is soft, steady. Tick, tick, tick. He pauses to sip from his skin, then notes it down, Feats, one less mouthful. The world has narrowed to such things: ropes, numbers, sips of water. Later, when the sun climbs, the caravan attempts to rise. One of the camels refuses again. Its knees buckle, its load shifting. The men argue. Leave it. Push it. Kill it for meat, Feats. But the handler shakes his head. Instead, he empties half a sack of flour into smaller bundles, ties them with cord, Feats. He spreads the weight among 3 men. He strokes the camel's neck, coaxes it upright. Slowly, grudgingly, it rises. A small mercy, Feats. You feel something stir inside, faint, fragile. At the sight, even here where stone and hunger press in, patience still holds weights. The ascent resumes. The ropes are fixed to iron stakes, guiding you up narrow cuts in the cliff. Your fingers throb with each grip. Dust fills your throat. The air is still heavy, as though the plateau has stolen the wind itself. Midway up, a rope snaps. The sound is sharp, sudden. A bundle tumbles, scattering grain that vanishes into the abyss. A cry rises, panic spreading. For a moment, the line halts, Feats. The handler kneels. Calmly, without a word, he pulls the frayed end into his lap. His knife works swiftly, trimming fibers, splicing strands. Feats. He knots, pulls knots again. His movements are sure, practiced. When he finishes, he tugs the rope once, twice. It holds, Feats. You feel your breath return. A small thing. Cord mended, weight secured, yet it feels like the balance of life itself. That night, the campfire smolders weakly. Supplies are thin, water skins lighter than you dare admit. The young man offers you half a date. Only half, Feats. You chew it slowly, savoring the sweetness. It lingers on your tongue, a reminder of something more than dust and stone. The others huddle silent, exhaustion too deep for words. The fire pops once, sending sparks into the black sky. You take out your notebook, Feats, though your hands tremble. By firelight you write day 31, rope broke, repaired. Flour 2 sacks remain, shared among many. Dates 7. Water 5 skins, Feats. Plateau near summit. Cannot yet see. Strength failing, yet still breathing. You close the book, the leather warm in your hands. Its weight is comfort, Feats. Proof that your thoughts still matter even here. On the 32nd day, the wind changes. It comes sudden, rushing along the cliff face, Feats, carrying grit that stings your eyes. At first you fear a sandstorm, the kind that buries whole caravans. But the handler squints, then nods. Wind means summit near, he says. The words strike you like a spark, summit, near. The climb does not grow easier. Your limbs still ache, Feats, your chest still burns. But the thought of nearing something changes the air in your lungs. Each step, though painful, feels purposeful, Feats. By dusk you reach another ledge, wider than before. The wind presses cool against your skin. You look up, and for the first time see a faint line against the sky, the plateau's edge. It is still far, yet visible. You sink to your knees, Feats, not in triumph but in relief. The wall has not ended you. Not yet. That night, the handler lights a stronger fire, Feats. He breaks a small bundle of dried herbs into it, and the smoke rises fragrant, sharp, almost medicinal. The scent cuts through dust and sweat, Feats, clearing your lungs. The young man sits beside you. He shows you his slate, the numbers etched tight, cramped, but still there, Feats. 3 skins, he says, enough. You do not answer at once. You study the fire, the sparks drifting upward. Enough, you say at last. The word tastes uncertain, but it steadies him. He nods, erases a line, marks another. His ritual continues. The survival moment comes not in triumphs, but in the smallest of gestures. A rope repaired, a camel coaxed upward, half a date shared, a fire made fragrant by herbs. Rates. None of these will be sung in histories. None will prove or disprove the age of stones. But to you in this place, they are everything. Rates. Proof that endurance is made not of grand victories, but of quiet continuances. When you lie down that night, you expect only restlessness, but instead, sleep comes gently. You dream of water, not in skins or wells, but a wide river, cool and flowing. Rates. You dream of Cairo's lamps reflecting in its surface, of steamships gliding by. You dream of the Nile itself, endless, steady. Rates. Carrying memory older than empires. When you wake, the dream lingers, soft as the smoke in the air. And for the first time since the war began. Rates. You feel not only emptiness but something else, the faint pulse of resolve. You are still here, still climbing. The wall has not won. Rates. The wall does not end overnight. It rises still, vast and unrelenting. Yet something has shifted within you, subtle but steady. Where once each step felt like defiance, now it feels like habit. Pain remains, but pain has become familiar. Fatigue still drags at your limbs. Rates. But your body knows the rhythm of it. You are adapting. On the 33rd morning, the camp stirs with a different air. The handler wakes before dawn, as always, but this time his movements are not frantic. He sharpens his knife slowly, evenly, letting sparks fall into the sand. He checks the camel's hooves, binding small cracks with strips of cloth. The young man tallies provisions. Rates. Chalk ticking against slate, but there is no panic in his numbers. His voice is even. 3 skins of water, 6 dates, 1 sack of flour. The handler nods, not grim, not hopeful, simply acknowledging. The numbers are facts, no more, no less. You begin to see that adaptation is not merely endurance, it is acceptance. Numbers are no longer warning, but compine brains, the steady beat of survival. Climbing continues. Your hands bleed less now, caluses thickened from rope and stone. Rates. Your feet find footholds almost without thought, learning the pattern of ledges and cracks. When the sun burns. Rates. You drape cloth across your brow just so, shading eyes without losing sight of the path. Rates. The handler teaches you how to breathe shallow through your teeth when the air is thin. Like the camels, he says. Small, steady. Rates. Not greedy. You practice, and though your chest still aches, you do not wheeze as before. Adaptation again. That evening, a small fire crackles. Rates. There is almost no fuel left, only dried dung gathered in scraps, but the handler arranges it carefully, coaxing flame with practiced hands. Rates. He sprinkles in a pinch of crushed herbs from his pouch, and the smoke curls fragrant, sharper than before. The men sit closer. Rates. Their faces hollow but calmer. They pass a skin, each taking measured sips. No one gulps, no one begs for more. Rates. The young man breaks a date into 4 pieces. He places one on your palm, a fragment no bigger than a coin. You place it on your tongue. Rates. Close your eyes and let it dissolve slowly. This is how hunger becomes routine, not by filling the belly. Rates. But by teaching the mind to live on fragments. By the 34th day, even the camels have settled into rhythm. They move slower. Rates. Their steps deliberate, but their groans are fewer. The handler has adjusted their loads, not evenly, but wisely. Rates. Balancing the stronger against the weaker. Each rope is tied with fresh knots, double braided. When one beast falters, the others pause without panic. Rates. They kneel, chew the bit weight. Then, with a tug, they rise again. You begin to see the caravan itself as a single creature. Many bodies moving with one will. In the afternoons, the wind comes steady now, carrying grit but also coolness. Rates. You learn to angle your head so the sand stings your cheek instead of your eyes. You tie cloth tighter, breathe through dampened fabric. Rates. The young man teaches you to wet only a corner of cloth with water, never soaking it. A drop here, he says. Rates. Saves a mouthful there. You nod, the logic sharp as numbers. Each measure counts. At night you write by ember light. Day 34. Flour nearly gone, water low, wind constant, yet steps sure, ropes holding, camel steady, men quieter. Fatigue feels normal now. Rates. As if the body learns its cage and walks within it. You pause, listening to the silence around you. The fire snaps softly. Beyond it, the plateau looms dark, endless. You dip your pen again. Perhaps this is how the ancients endured. Not through strength alone. Rates. But through the slow mastery of scarcity. Learning to live smaller, learning to last. On the 35th day, you begin to notice detail again. Rates. Where before all stone looked the same, now you see differences, red streaks in the cliff, places where wind has carved hollows, rates, patches where lichen clings stubborn to rock. You spot a bird, black against the sky, circling high above. The handler notices too. He tilts his head, rates, mutters a word sign. You do not ask of what. Whether omen or fact, it is enough that his eyes hold interest again. Adaptation becomes ritual. Morning ropes checked, knots retied. Camels watered, skins counted, dates split. Chalk scratching on slate. Day climb, pause, climb, rates. Breathing shallow, steps measured, hands steady on rope. Evening fire coaxed, herbs sprinkled, fragments shared. Embers banked, quiet sleep. Each day mirrors the last, and yet the repetition steadies the mind. You no longer dream of rescue, nor despair of death. You dream of ledges, ropes, braits and knots. You dream of numbers chalked in neat lines. It is not hope that carries you forward now, but pattern. The handler speaks more often, braits. His words spare but guiding. He shows you how to rub camel hide with oil to keep it supple, braits. How to bind cracked rope with wet cloth to tighten fibers as it dries. He points at the stars, naming ones you had forgotten, tracing paths across the sky. This way, he says. Always northeast. The young man listens, slate balanced on his knee, braits, marking stars as if they too can be tallied. You begin to mark them in your notebook, small constellations beside your words, braits. Their steadiness comforts you, proof that not all things change, even as rations shrink. By the 36th day, the summit seems nearer, braits. Not close, but nearer. The air is cooler, the wind stronger. When you climb, you see patches of plateau above, flat and pale. Braits. The handler studies it long, then turns to the men. 2 days, he says. No one cheers, no one doubts, they simply nod and continue, braits. 2 days may mean salvation. It may mean only more emptiness. But it is a number, and numbers hold. That night, you share the last of the flour, braits. It is mixed with water into a thin paste, spread onto hot stones by the fire. The cakes are small, brittle, but warm. You eat slowly, savoring the taste of grain. The young man licks his fingers, then closes his slate with care. Flour none, he says simply, braits. There is no despair in his tone, only fact. The handler pulls the last bundle of herbs, sprinkles them into the fire. Smoke rises fragrant once more, braits. Adaptation is complete. You live not by plenty, but by the pattern of little. When you lie down, the wind hums through cracks in the stone, braits. Almost like a voice. The stars burn bright above, steady and cold. You close your eyes, and for the first time in many days, you feel something close to calm. Your body aches, your belly is hollow, but your mind has found rhythm. This is how you endure. Not by breaking the wall, not by conquering it, but by becoming part of it. Stone, rope, fire, breath. Number, sip, step, sleep. Adaptation, braits. The 38th dawn comes with thin light, pale as ash. You wake to the sound of wind not pushing, braits, but pulling, as though it has found room to stretch, sweeping over something broad and empty above. The handler rises first, as he always does, braits, but his eyes hold something new. He does not bark orders. He stands still, head lifted, listening. The camels stir uneasily, their groans low, braits, almost questioning. Even the young man pauses in his tolly, chalk poised above slate, as though numbers alone cannot capture this moment. You feel it too, the sense of nearness, not of safety, not of triumph, but of change. By mid-morning, the climb eases. The slope still rises, but less steeply. The air thins, cool and sharp, each breath carrying the taste of stone and dust. The rocks beneath your boots feel smoother, braits, less fractured, as though shaped long ago by hands or water you cannot see. You climb in silence, braits, broken only by the scuff of rope and the steady thud of camel feet. Then, as the sun shifts, the ridge opens. The plateau spreads before you, braits. It is not the flat expanse you imagined. It undulates in low swells, scattered with boulders, its surface cracked like old parchment. Patches of sand gather in shallow basins, shifting with the wind. In the distance, darker shapes rise. Not cliffs, not mountains, but block rates, vast and angular. You stop, breath caught. The handler squints into the distance, then mutters a single word under his breath, rates. You cannot tell if it is Arabic, Coptic, or older still. The sound of it settles heavy in the air, as though naming something too large to be owned. The caravan steps onto the plateau. The wind is colder here, cutting across the open space, carrying a smell that surprises you, not just dust, but water, faint, distant, as though hidden deep within stone. The camels lift their heads, nostrils flaring. The young man frowns at his slate. He writes miles uncertain and closes it. For the first time, numbers do not seem to matter. You walk forward, each step crunching over gravel. The horizon stretches wide, but the sense of confinement remains. It is not the desert that cages you now, but the immensity of silence. The ruins appear by afternoon. At first, you think them natural ridges of stone thrust upward, weathered into sharp lines. But as you draw nearer, the shapes reveal order. Blocks laid upon blocks, some toppled, some half buried in sand. Edges worn by centuries of wind, yet still straight, still purposeful. The handler stops, resting a hand on one block, his palm flat as if feeling a pulse. He does not speak. You crouch beside it, tracing a groove with your fingertips. The cut is too clean to be chance, too deliberate to be mere rockfall. The stone is granite, harder than the sandstone of the cliffs below. You recall the measurements from Patri's surveys in the 1880s, his astonishment at the precision of blocks weighing 50 tons or more. And yet here lies one, shattered and half buried, miles from any known site. The young man whispers, almost to himself, not Egyptian. The words hang in the air, fragile as glass. The handler turns sharply, his eyes warning. But he does not deny it. You write in your notebook granite blocks at plateau summit. No markings visible. Alignment irregular. Suggest pre-dynastic or non-dynastic origin. Your hand shakes as you write, not from fatigue, but from the enormity of it. That night, the fire burns small, but its smoke rises into still air. You sit close, notebook on your knee, listening to the silence beyond the camp. The ruins loom faint in starlight, shapes half swallowed by shadow. The handler speaks low, his voice carrying weight. Many stories of places like this. Not for men, not for living. He does not elaborate. He sprinkles herbs into the fire, the smoke curling upward. The camels kneel restlessly, eyes reflecting sparks. The young man says nothing, slate untouched. His hands fold in his lap, pale in the firelight. You close your eyes, the smell of herbs sharp in your nose, and feel the plateau pressing close. Not hostile, not welcoming, simply vast. On the 39th morning, you rise stiff, joints aching from cold. The sun climbs slow, casting long shadows over the ruins. Light reveals more detailed blocks cut with near, right angles, some stacked in lines, others scattered as if torn down. No inscriptions, no cartouches, nothing of the pharaohs. You measure one with your stride, nearly 12 feet long, 4 wide. Its surface is pitted, edges rounded by time, yet the cut is still clear. You cannot imagine it hauled up cliffs by human hands, not without machines or methods unknown. The young man traces lines in the dust with chalk, sketching the arrangement of blocks. His drawing looks nothing like Egyptian temples, more like fragments of walls, platforms, perhaps foundations. You remember the inventory stele, that controversial slab found in Giza, speaking of monuments older than Khufu, of temples existing long before dynastic kings. Scholars scoffed, dismissing it as myth. But standing here on this plateau, myth feels less like fancy, more like record. By noon, the caravan moves deeper. The plateau undulates, leading to shallow depressions where sand has gathered. In one, you find a hollow lined with stone, its walls smoothed, its shape almost circular. At the bottom lies dust, but when the handler scrapes, dampness darkens his fingers. Water. The camels bray, pulling at their ropes. You draw it up in handfuls, muddy but drinkable. The taste is metallic, mineral, but your throat welcomes it. The young man measures carefully, recording how much each skin can hold. You realize then that others have stood here before, enough to carve a basin, enough to find water. Whoever built upon this plateau, they knew how to endure. Evening comes with a strange quiet. The fire burns low, almost reverent. The ruins lie scattered around you, their shapes catching starlight, their silence louder than speech. You sense eyes upon you, not hostile, but ancient, the weight of centuries pressing close. You write in your notebook, If the pyramids are not Egyptian, then what are they? Not tombs, markers, beacons, or remnants of a people erased. The Palermo stone speaks of kings before means. Could they have built such things, or were even they latecomers, inheritors of ruins already ancient? The words feel heavy as you inscribe them. You pause, listening to the wind hum between blocks, almost like a low chant. Not triumph, not glory, only awe and questions too large for answers. When you lie down, blankets drawn tight against the chill, you do not dream of return, nor of victory. You dream of stone, vast, unyielding, silent. The plateau does not welcome you, but it has accepted your presence, and in that quiet acceptance you find rest. The 40th dawn rises pale, stretched thin across the plateau. You wake with stiffness in your limbs, but less dread. For the first time in weeks, there is no need to climb, no rope to bite into your palms. The ground is level, though cracked and ancient. You rise, brush dust from your coat, and feel not like a trespasser, but like someone standing at the threshold of something new. The handler leads the camels to drink from the stone basin, the animals lowering their heads gratefully. The young man sits cross-legged on the ground, slate balanced on his knees, sketching the lines of scattered blocks against the horizon. And you find yourself not merely surviving, but observing again. The part of you that once belonged to London lecture halls, to musty museum basements and quiet nights copying glyphs by lamplight, awakens. For the first time since Cairo, you are yourself, but not the same self. You begin to measure. Pulling a strip of rope from your satchel, you knot it at intervals 1 cubit, 1 yard, 1 fathom. With chalk you mark lengths along granite blocks, noting dimensions in your notebook. 12 feet here, 15 there. Widths of 4 feet, 5. Angles carved sharper than wind could shape. The young man watches, then copies your motions. He kneels beside another block, tracing chalk lines across its surface. His handwriting is clumsy, but eager. You correct him gently. Keep the line true. Stone deserves straight measure. He nods, trying again, the chalk clicking softly against rock. And in this small act, you realize something. You are no longer only taking. You are giving, teaching, passing skill onward. By midday, the handler brings you to a depression further north. He says nothing, only points. There, half buried in sand, lies a flat slab unlike the others. Its surface is smoother, its edges bevel. When you brush away dust, faint lines appear, not hieroglyphs, but grooves, geometric, almost like a grid. You trace them with your fingers. Heart quickening. They remind you of Petrie's survey drawings, the way he measured pyramid alignments to cardinal points with uncanny precision. Could these grooves have been similar, some early form of layout, a survey carved into stone itself? The handler shrugs when you ask. Always here, he says. Older than memory. Older than memory. The words settle heavy in your chest. The young man draws the slab carefully, copying each groove into his slate. His hand shakes, but he persists, erasing, redrawing, until the lines are true. You watch him, remembering your own beginnings, the first time you traced glyphs in a London basement, ink smearing your cuffs. You say nothing, only place a hand briefly on his shoulder. He looks up, startled, then nods. That evening, you gather the group around the fire. Not for rations, but for words. You speak slowly, softly, your voice carrying just enough to meet their ears. These stones, they may not be Egyptian, they may not belong to pharaohs or dynasties, but they were built, aligned, shaped. They mean something. And we are the ones here to see. The young man listens intently, slate forgotten in his lap. The handler says nothing, but his eyes remain fixed on the fire. You do not speak of glory nor of fame. You speak of record, of truth, of duty to the stones themselves. Even if the world mocks us, you say quietly, the record must remain. Someone must write it down. The words settle, not like command, but like promise. Over the next days, you fall into rhythm again, not of climbing, nor of hunger, but of work. Morning measuring blocks, sketching their placement, noting dimensions. Afternoon exploring depressions and hollows, marking any trace of alignment. Evening, gathering at the fire, comparing notes, sharing fragments of thought. The young man grows steadier, his chalk lines cleaner, his slate crowded with marks. He begins to ask questions. Why this angle? Why this stone, not another? His voice carries no fear now, it's only curiosity. The handler continues his duties, tending camels, rationing water, but he too lingers near the ruins. Sometimes you catch him tracing grooves in stone with his thumb, silent, reverent. This plateau is no longer merely a trial of endurance. It has become a classroom, a workshop, a place of witness. One afternoon you find a stone half buried at the edge of a shallow basin. You dig with your hands, scraping sand away, until more of it is revealed. Upon its surface, faint etchings emerge, not clear hieroglyphs, but patterns, swirls, lines too eroded to name. You call the others. Together you kneel, brushing gently, tracing. The young man whispers, "Letters, not Egyptian." You answer, "Older, perhaps, or from elsewhere." The handler's brow furrows, but he does not stop you. Instead, he fetches water, pours a trickle over the grooves. Moisture darkens the stone, lines sharpening under starlight. For a moment, it feels as though the plateau itself has spoken. You do not attempt translation. Not yet. Instead you sketch, slow and careful, each curve, each broken mark. The young man mirrors you, chalk scratching eagerly. This is the work now, not conquest but preservation. At night, the fire glows steady, smoke curling into sharp air. You sit wrapped in blanket, notebook on your knees, pen scratching. We came as survivors. Now we remain as recorders, stones not Egyptian but older. Foundations suggest purpose beyond tomb. Alignments deliberate. Symbols unknown. Water basin carved, still holding trace of supply. Who built these? For what? You pause, then add one line more. Perhaps pharaohs were not builders, but heirs. The thought chills you, yet steadies you too. The young man asks questions even by firelight. If not pharaohs, then who? Giants. Gods. You shake your head. Not gods. People, always people. But people older than we knew. He frowns, silent, then nods slowly. The handler stirs the fire, sparks rising, his eyes reflecting flame. He does not argue. Perhaps he has always known. On the 42nd morning, you climb a rise at the edge of the plateau. From there you see not only scattered ruins, but faint lines stretching beyond. Rows of stone mounds, half buried, almost erased. They form no pyramid, but a pattern long avenues, perhaps, or foundations of walls now gone. Your breath catches. You sketch quickly, your hand trembling not from weakness, but from awe. The young man clambers beside you, eyes wide. Together you map the faint lines, both of you straining to capture them before the light shifts and shadows erase them. The handler remains below, tending camels. Yet when you descend, he meets your gaze. His silence speaks what words cannot. Now you see. That night, the plateau feels less alien, not welcoming but known. The ruins are not a riddle to solve in one stroke, but a text to read slowly, patiently, across days, perhaps years. You realize then you may not uncover every truth here. You may not even survive long enough to bring your notes to Cairo. But still you write. Still you teach the young man to measure, to sketch, to tally. Still you pass each method onward, as though ensuring that even if you falter, the record will remain. You are not merely archaeologist now. You are mentor, guide, witness. This perhaps is the new world. When you lie down beneath sharp stars, the plateau vast around you, you no longer feel only hunger or fatigue. You feel purpose. Not the grand, glittering purpose of lecture halls and accolades, but a quieter one to see, to mark, to pass on. You smile faintly as you close your notebook. The stones will outlast you, but because of you, their silence will not. And in that thought, you sleep.